Hey there, I'm Ashley Sloan, this is Eli Mack, and we're here to help you figure out how to build your high tensile fence that'll stand the test of time and be versatile and advantageous for your farm for years to come. The most important part of that is starting to plan.
With planning comes a consideration for context. Context is the reason or reasons behind doing something a certain way. So when we're talking about fencing, context boils down to a few key points. Those key points might be budget. What kind of a budget do you have to build versus materials, time, and labor? Another consideration might be your landscape, your topography, any obstacles that you need to fence around or fence in that might affect how you build the fence or the materials used. But largely, your biggest context check is going to be wildlife and livestock pressure. So ask yourself, what do we need this fence to accomplish? What kind of livestock are we keeping in? What kind of predators are we keeping out? And then build accordingly and plan your material list accordingly. With our particular build that you're going to see in this video series, it's a high tensile fence. It's going to be on a linear run, so a straight line, and it's going to be used to keep cattle and sheep on one side of the fence. With that in mind, we're going to do posts at 30-foot spacing. We're running 6 strands of wire, and 3 of those strands are going to be electrified. That's the context for this build. That's what's going to be most effective, and that's how we're going to keep these cattle and sheep where they need to be. Once you hash out your context, you're ready to start mapping and laying out your fence.
So the first part of that is figuring out how much materials we need to fence that part of the land. So we need to figure out the distance from our beginning to our end. And while there's several different ways to do that, there's different apps. You can get out your tape measure, or our recommended and favorite way to do it is using the measure wheel. That gets your boots on the ground, you're feeling your land, the dips and the rises in your land, and you can also get the measurements of the posts as you go along to get your final measurement. So let's go measure some land. All right, so today we're gonna be using the 19-inch measure wheel by Meterman. This is our favorite and recommended wheel. Because of the 19-inch wheel, it helps you get over top of those high spots and low spots easier in your fence line. It has the extendable handle so that it adjusts to your height. It has a high visibility display showing both feet and inches that you want to make sure you zero before taking any measurements. And you can pick up your kickstand and you're ready to measure.
So now that we've gained our measurements and our distance for our fence, we know the area that we're fencing in or out. You can turn your focus to some of the other permanent or less than permanent features that are going to be included in your fencing system. Now keep in mind, you want this fence to be applicable for as long as possible, so you want to plan for immediate uses as well as any changes, add-ons, expansions down the road. Here are a few primer questions to help you consider these other facets of your fence design. Do you have enough gate openings for this fence system, and are they wide enough to accommodate the largest piece of equipment that you might use or that you might borrow? Are these gateways also convenient with existing or planned roadways? Where and how will you access water for livestock? Where and how will you access shade or shelter if it's needed? Other considerations might be the movement patterns of wildlife or livestock. How will this fence system be electrified? Are you going to plug in an AC energizer that's more stationary back at a barn or a shop location, or maybe use a 12-volt battery or a solar application to provide electric to your fence system? If you're going to have interior division fencing, consider how you will electrify those strands of, say, a reel or some other kind of portable fencing. Are you going to be able to hook in at any point in the fence, or do you need specific designated hookup spots for your interior fencing? Are there any heavy use areas in this fence system, including corrals, sacrifice pastures, or alleyways that might see high traffic or high pressure? Perhaps in these areas you need to overbuild and add additional bracing, as well as any areas with extreme dips or rises that might require additional bracing. All of these things will overall affect the build of your project, and you need to plan for them ahead of time. Some of these features are easier to move than others, but none of them are convenient to move after the fact. If you're uncertain about any of these features at the onset of your project, try to build them as temporarily as possible to begin with. This will allow you some room to experiment until you find the most functional design for your application. By planning for these at the onset, you might save some time and maybe a few dollars along the way. So now that we have our fence planned, we know the context for our build and a rough material list based on the distances we've gathered. We've plotted the main features of the fence, and we're ready to install the main marker post on this line. For example, we have the corner post up here at this end that we need to drive, as well as the end post at the far end where we're going to be hanging a gate in the future. To aid in the installation of these key marker posts, we went ahead and strung this twine. It's hanging off our property markers, and this is going to give us a nice straight line to line these posts, coming from this corner post all the way down to the end post where the gate will hang. These posts are CCA treated to a 0.40 density. Treatment does matter with your wooden posts, so if you're getting ready to purchase posts, please pay attention to their treatment process. You want a post that's going to last you a lifetime and for the rest of your fence. With our guide wire in place, we're ready to start driving some of these key posts. We're going to start with our corner post up here. This is a 6 to 7 inch tapered post. We're going to drive the taper, the skinny end, into the ground for a nice snug fit, and we're going to drive so that we have a finished height of 50 inches out of the ground. That accounts for 48 inches to space our wires accordingly, with a 2-inch post reveal at the top. I have this post marked with a pen or a marker. You can also use a hanging chain from your driver. If you measure that chain distance, you know that as you drive, when that chain hits the ground, you're at height. Today we'll be using the Kencove Nitro 750 post driver mounted on a skid steer. And as always, when you're handling equipment or machinery, make sure you protect yourself. Today we're going to be using safety glasses. We've got gloves, ear protection, as well as steel-toed boots. Make sure you always take care of yourself when you're around this equipment. One tip for installing your corner post: because this post is going to be taking the brunt of the tension or the pull on the fence, we want to give it a little bit of an outside lean. So we're going to account for about 2 inches over lean to the outside. That way, as you tension the fence, there's no way this post can come back to vertical or past vertical, at which point your bracing would be compromised.
Hi, I'm Digger, and I'm operating the skid steer today with the Kencove Nitro 750. This unit operates by hydraulically compressing nitrogen, which transfers the energy to the post driver cap. Specific features of this driver include the post cap, which will drive up to an 8-inch diameter post, 2 post holders, which allow for easy transportation of posts from one location to the next, and an easily accessible chain, which provides 2 functions, a plumb bob as well as a depth gauge.
In the next segment, we'll show you the procedure for planning and driving line posts.